Gina will advance slides. I'll go through the presentation. If we can hold questions till I get through the presentation, I think it'd take me about 15 minutes to get through it, and then I'm here until you're done asking questions, and we can go backwards to cover everything. So if we go to the next slide. We're here really to kind of talk about the opportunity. Rhode Island does require a 5-year elementary school plan. This is what we're really here to talk about, what to do. Your schools are over 50 years old. Rhode Island looks at schools in like 50-year life cycle. So if we were to do a new school or renovate to new, 50 years is what we have to design to systems to. A lot of those, your systems in existing schools, the schools are well maintained, but the systems are at the end of their useful life. There's some leaks in some of the buildings, some of those things. The Jacobs report was done in 2017 as assessment. That's really mostly about warm, safe, and dry. That's not about any curricular corrections or advanced teaching methodologies. It's really just about keeping the water out, the heating system on, those types of things. There is a new assessment that's going on right now, currently within the state, but that won't be available until, I don't know, a year from now probably. It's going to take them some time to do that. So the maintenance needs from the Jacobs report doesn't look like a lot. That's just back in 2017 dollars, what it would be to keep warm, safe, and dry. Obviously, those schools have had some issues since then. That's a full 8 years later. Continue to get water to a building, things get a little bit worse. So that has been happening. One thing I want to make very clear, that when we think about your reimbursement, 61% is your base number. That's from the RIDE site. There's 4% for regionalization because you've come together in the Charahoe Act. 65% is the number for reimbursement. We'll talk about that a lot later in the presentation, but just as the basics. So we are here on October 6th. I think we're going to do a virtual meeting as well.
Yep, we just verified that there'll be messaging going out October 15th. We'll do one more at 5:30 virtual. Thank you.
So you get to poke me with questions one more time, virtually. It has been an interesting process. It has not stopped from the last time we looked at this. There's been a lot of things going on. The key for us is we were brought on in September, basically to look at what to do, look at 3 different options that I'll describe. This is for stage 2. I'll talk a little bit about what stage 2 is and how stage 2 differs from stage 3 and stage 4. You already have had stage 1. So we're in this process right now. We're trying to get to effectively a referendum in the fall of next year. October 21st is an important date. We will present again sort of a recap of what we've heard to the school committee, and that's for them to make up their mind on what they would like to vote for, which option would move forward to be submitted for stage 2 in February. Once an option is selected, we're not done. We're just getting started. So what you're seeing here are conceptual imagery, conceptual pricing, to get sort of an apples-to-apples comparison to 3 different things that we were asked to look at. Stage 1, which you submitted in February of 25, approved in June of 25, sets up stage 2, which is where we are right now. Stage 2 is all about a submission that looks at a master plan for that 5 years. It wants to tie square footage and an option or a scheme, a solution to a funding model. And the 2 have to sort of come together. So that's what we're here to do. It's really to develop a master plan and a funding model and a methodology for moving forward. Stage 3 is when you hire an architect and design team to complete contract documents. That gets bid, built, and then stage 4 is project closeout. So that has to happen within a 5-year cycle. So once you get the agreement on stage 2 and stage 2 gets signed off on by RIDE in a state, it starts a 5-year clock to complete. So we looked at, I'm going to turn this a little bit so I can see that. We looked at 3, we're asked to look at 3 options. And again, in no particular order of preference or rating, just the way we've kind of organized the presentation. Option 1 is a unified school building on a site that we don't know yet. I was trudging through the woods of all 3 of your towns, and I got bit up pretty good today, but you got a lot of trees and a lot of brush to push back through. But we want to look at pre-K through 4. There is an option we have been discussing, and it has come up in community forums about adding 5th grade into the elementary school. That's something we'll continue to work with Gina and her professional staff on if that makes sense, depending on the option that's chosen. Option 2, so option 1 is all new. What I will tell you is will not impact the existing campus. The middle school, the high school, the fields, off limits. It can't be there. Option 2 is renovate to new with additions. So when you look at a building like we're in right now, it's a little small compared to modern RIDE standards. The average classroom is about 560 square feet. RIDE would like to see 900 square feet. That's not to put more kids in, that's to put more different ways of learning. So you could move desks around, move kids around, and kind of get into group settings and do different things within a classroom. It's not all about face forward anymore. It's certainly not about tablet armchairs anymore. So we've looked at, for each of the schools, I'll go through what we would need to do, at least conceptually. And then option 3 was what we looked at a couple of years ago. We brought that forward, a couple of programmatic changes, upgraded the pricing to today's dollars, just to sort of have that apples to apples to apples comparison. As I mentioned, upper grades on the main campus and the main campus proper stays unchanged, not impacted by the elementary school. In terms of ed spec, one of the things that we will need to do is provide parity. No matter what option is chosen, we have to provide parity amongst, if it's 3 schools or 1 school. We want that ed spec and the way of delivering curriculum to be different than what you're able to do today. When we look at the stage 2, we have to deal with projections. So that is a number of 1,281 students. We know you only have 1,070, round number, 77? I lost that. So 1,077. What that number is very important. We'd like that number to be as high as possible because your state funding is dependent on that number. There's a formula and a calculation you go through to get the funding model in place. When you go to stage 3, you can take the money and figure out how to use it, not spend as much, do different things. But from the state, we want, in this case, we want to make build the numbers as large as possible to get the most money for you. Academic program spaces, we want all the schools to be the same size, same type, so the gyms are the same. This is small compared to what we would do in a modern elementary school. The stripings are a little different. We typically don't see platforms for stages in gyms anymore. There's different things that we do. Cafeterias, when you start to think about populations in a school, they have to get bigger, kitchens have to get bigger to support that. All those things kind of add up. One note, swing space would be required if you renovate to new or replace the schools on the existing sites. You have to find a place to put the children while that work is going on, because the sites aren't big enough to do that on top of it. Oops. So option 1, unified school. Again, it's a site to be named later, as we're kind of looking at options and opportunities with everyone. One of the key things about a building like this is you can get more multi-purpose fields, you get more outside space because of the number of children in the school. Likely it would be divided up into what we call an early childhood center, say like pre-K through 1, and then sort of an upper middle school, which could be 2 through 4 or 2 through 5 if 5th graders came back into the mix. You'd want to be careful about all the kind of drop-off and things and problems you have in these schools today where buses and parents tend to mix on drop-off and it kind of creates havoc. We want to solve that, and whichever scheme or option is looked at, we have to solve that. RIDE is really very picky about that, rightfully so. We go to the next. Again, if we look at the plan of this is just one configuration. If this option is chosen as a preferred option to move forward with, we would come back to you in more community forums and work the design together. We just sort of have workshops of how a pre-K student would come into the building versus a 4th grader. All those things could be a little bit different. Scales of buildings are different. The types of space needs are different. For instance, pre-K classrooms have a bathroom inside of it, because you don't want the little legs running down the corridor to a restroom far, far away. They're very quick. First grade, second grade, the opportunity for shared cafeterias or 2 cafeterias, or a unified school instead of 3 cafeterias, you probably have 2. 1 kitchen shared instead of 3 kitchens. You have a gym that's big enough for capacity, 1 gym effectively, larger than this, but not 3 gyms. So there is some benefit there. There was a lot of interesting discussion about what it would be like to be in going from like here, a pretty small school, to something that had a little bit more size to it. But I think as we kind of talked through as a group, the expanded learning opportunities, the thematic learning that you have today could still be mapped into a facility like this. So it was health and wellness, or the outdoor environment, or the sustainability or STEM track. All of that could still be mapped to this, so you have those individual clusters. The nice thing now, in a unified school, if I'm from a town that doesn't have STEM and it has health and wellness, but I want STEM, I could get access to that. So that's a little bit different, something to think about, some opportunities. Likely, we'd like to try to stay at 2 stories for these schemes. We probably would study a 3-story version, just depending on the land that's available. One of the ride's tenets right now is to shrink the footprints, go a little bit more vertical. Foundations can be expensive, so they just like us to study limiting it. But a 2-story option fits very easily. This is about a 23 to 30 acre site to complete this, with all the fields and the parking, the things that you need. A conceptual image, this is on the upper elementary school side where the bus drop-off is, the main administrative offices, the nurse, things like that. The back side of this would have the CALA drop-off, the pre-K and K drop-off, the early education drop-off, plus inclusive classrooms are in a sort of back upper corner. Those are all the trees that I walked through this afternoon. When we look at options, additions for renovations and additions, we'll start with here where we are today. We tried to do this in an interesting way. We looked at each school and looked to try to keep the bones that we thought were appropriate to keep. The sites are small, so what you're seeing in a red box are things that we felt we had to demo because it was either single story, didn't utilize the site footprint very well, or would hold up any kind of addition. So here, where we are in Ashaway, within that red box, those 4 classrooms, that wing that's kind of in that direction, would come off, and that unlocks this sort of potential. What I will say is that every wall that you see in there, we'd likely have to demo in the existing. Because the rooms aren't the right size, because there's not the right insulation on that wall and water vapor drives through, we've got to take it down to basically the steel frame and build it back up again. It will be like a new building. So renovate to new means it's basically new. We're keeping slabs, roof structure, maybe, in the steel frame. Everything else is new. When we look at the site, the crosshatch is the existing to remain, reconfigured. The light gray is the new construction. So we're trying to fit right-size cafeteria, right-size kitchen, right-size gym, get bus drop-off, get parent drop-off, get security, because although we couldn't get into the building today, I know you don't have the ballistics glazing and the kinds of security measures that modern schools have to have. That's a requirement. Sad, but it is a requirement. Go to the next slide. What you can see is the classrooms, look at the size of a classroom. So existing versus new, you can sort of see the scale of the buildings are different, right? And it's not like you're teaching any more students in that room. It's just the modes of teaching are so different today. The rooms have to be bigger for the furniture and the types of space required to make the educational component work. What we'd also like to try to do in any of these schemes is have things like the gym, the media center, cafeteria, if we can, be accessed in a public way. So if you're doing voting or any after-hours activity, if you want to lock down the classroom wing, you could do that. And as a visitor, if I'm coming in during active hours, You want to be able to be checked in, your credentials checked out a window. You're in sort of what we call a person lock, which is ballistics rated. From that, you get into another sub-lobby space. So it's very difficult for a person to get into the building and pass through those security measures. Go to the next. Second floor, added on top, again, utilizing space very efficiently. These are not inexpensive moves to make to an existing facility. It's very nitpicky construction and hard to do. And there's also compromises versus new. I can only do so much with the existing building that's left. Again, the character, we can change the character. It can be modern, inviting, beautiful, depending on what your preference is. We just show something in stage 2 that we know matches the budget. So you have a material palette to draw against, right? Bride wants to see if this is chosen, okay, slam. How can you prove to us that, given the funding available, that we can make this happen? So we have to go to this level to prove that to ride through some cost estimating and things like that. Go next. When you look at Charlestown, interesting school, a lot of topography on that site. If you're in a wheelchair or on crutches, very difficult to get around that facility. Not impossible, but not wonderful. And it's spread out as far as you can, there's a lot of corridor there. So as we look at that facility and try to figure out, go to the next. The red box there is even bigger than here, right? It's a bigger facility, but there's a lot of issues with what we'll call the left side versus the right side. So we want to try to figure out how to take all those ramps and make it easier for parents, students, teachers, administrators to sort of move around the building at one level, so it's accessible. Go to the next. Interesting site. When I first looked at this a couple of years ago, it's, hey, we got all that space behind. That's like a mountain. I didn't walk through that because I know that's a lot of rock outcropping, so that's a lot of granite exposed, very difficult to do something with. You can see the little bit of the crosshatch that we kept in the bigger new addition. This facility is, for this scheme, all on one level, so it spreads out quite a bit. So it takes a bunch of that site. It's a little bit more difficult to get the bus drop-off and the parent drop-off to work. We think we can make it happen, but there's a lot of grade change from here to there as you look at trying to drive a bus through and make the Rhode Island DOT happy with the entrances and the egresses for vehicular traffic, but not impossible. Go to next. You'll start to see very similar themes where we can. Everything to the left here is what I call that public side, the bigger amenity spaces, cafeteria, platform, gym, media center, administrative offices, the kitchen, and then the academic wing to the left. This facility gets the pre-K classrooms, so there are 6 of those with expanded learning, which is this here, that up there. A lot of the space outside the classroom is just as important as the space inside the classroom. So you can team teach, bring groups of kids together, utilize those spaces. We call them Da Vinci spaces, so you can do art and different things in those. It just gives you a lot more creativity in how you want to teach and deliver curriculum. Oh, that's fine. Go to the next. Again, the look of this. Again, single story, trying to pick up on some of the barn vernacular, brick, glass, stone, some of the materials we see around campuses and around the communities. My favorite one to work on, the biggest red box. This one has a split, what I call a split level historic front piece. So you enter mid-level and you immediately have to go downstairs or upstairs to get to where you want to go. It's not the most friendly for somebody who has mobility issues. In the back, it's even worse because it was just added on to over time. So what we wanted to do is knock down the single-story components that are on multiple levels and see if we could compress the footprint. This is the biggest site of the 3 existing sites, so there's a little more opportunity. Go to the next. We can sort of compose a very symmetrical front piece with a symmetrical addition, still maintain this idea of a courtyard. I'll show you in a minute where the gyms are, kitchen, the classroom spaces, those types of things. We do not want to touch the greenhouse. We don't want to impact the fields. All of these sites we have to redo. Probably the well, redo the septic, because capacities get bigger, septic systems age, we'd want to redo those. So it really starts to impact much more of the site than we originally thought. Go to the next. So as we look at this, you can see the complexity in the existing building. It's beautiful from the street, classic New England schoolhouse. It's horrible on the inside. It's narrow. Nothing's on the same level. It's hard to put an elevator in. So we have to really be picky, very choosy about the program we put in there, knowing that we want the largest program component, the classrooms, the learning commons, the gym, cafeteria, the platform, the media center, all to be accessible to students on one level. But we have to find something to put in this, so it gets to be complicated. Not thrilled with where this is. It's lower level is tough. It's partially below grade. Windows are tiny. We know there's some water and moisture issues. So we would, if this was chosen as an option, renovation addition, we'd have a lot of work to go in here. And there's a lot of unknowns. The previous two communities asked about guarantees of, what happens when you dig and you find something. Well, the money's the money, so there'd be a trade-off. So if we have to fix this, we can't do that. So there's more risk for sure in this kind of, at least where we are right now, in our understanding. Again, trying to respect the more historic front piece. Drop-off, bus drop-off, parent drop-off actually works pretty well. It still has some accessibility issues that we'd have to sort out. Then the last option are looking at the 3 sites. This is something we looked at a couple of years ago. We've updated them, a couple of programmatic changes, and really looking at the cost models. They all look the same except for the color, because we wanted to create a model school, not that they would be the same, but from a funding model for RIDE, just as proof of concept. Because stage 2, remember, is not about the final solution, it's about the master plan to get there. Let me just go through. If we knock buildings down, we're able to rotate the buildings and maximize the site potential. It's a lot easier to do that. So we're comfortable in all these conditions where bus drop-off and parent drop-off works pretty well. The planning, some of these have CALAs in some, you have inclusive classrooms, you have pre-K in another, but the basic planning principles are the same, where you have that sort of public space zone to the right and the classroom block to the left. Second floor in these schemes, trying to respect a 2-story architecture. You just keep going through these. They're going to look the same. It's really site diagrams. They all fit on a site pretty well. They maximize the potential of the sites, but you got to knock those buildings down to build these. And to do that, you have to find a place to put those students. And you have to do this in 5 years. So to complete that, you have to do 2 at a time at one point. So you have to swing 2 schools to make this work. And the site, again, big site, it's really elegant. So, a lot of discussion in the last couple meetings about construction costs. I'm going to show you a comparative cost analysis between each of the options, effectively in today's dollars, right? Not escalated yet to what could be tomorrow or 10 years from now, just today's dollars. RIDE, the money that comes available from RIDE, approximately 80% of that funding is eligible for the construction. About 20%, and it's why we say about, because there are some things that happen outside that number, would be for soft costs. Soft costs would be our fees, European fees, furniture, things like that. If you took the building, flipped it upside down, shook it out, things that fall out, those are soft costs. They're not like nailed or screwed to a wall. Within the soft cost, as I mentioned, you have some of these anticipated costs, but there are other costs that could come in. You have other technology, furniture and fixtures and equipment. RIDE allows 2,100 per student, which is why I go back to that student count that I mentioned before. You want that number high now, even though we know it's lower than that, because it gives you more money to play with. Same thing with technology, $3,000 per student. So with new construction, or like new renovation, we ensure sort of the RIDE standards are met. One thing that is also reimbursable that's not in that 20% number, land acquisition, right? That could be reimbursable up to that 65%. We don't know what that is because we don't know what the parcel is yet. Swing space, if you're gonna fit something out temporarily to house students, that's also reimbursable up to that 65% number from RIDE. So those would be basically on top of that number. RIDE also allows, I think, probably about $1 million for land remediation if you've had some soil conditions that aren't so favorable. Those are things that are on top of that. So the key for us is to look at how to maximize that 80% in this phase, knowing that you want to do better in the next phase. So when we looked at it, the unified option, which is 2 buildings combined, like an early childhood and an upper elementary on one site, shared amenities, is about 87.4 to about 89.3 million construction, that sort of 80% number in today's dollars. Option 2, which is the renovation and additions, is about 89.8 to 98.1. So more money because it's more finicky construction. And that doesn't include the swing space analysis yet. I would add, obviously, some more dollars to that. New construction, if you were to take each of the 3 schools, knock them down, and build new schools on the sites, the most expensive option at about 102.6 to 104.9. The reason why we show a range is because we think RIDE is going to, at some point this fall, have an escalation bump of about $15 per square foot of total cost. They did it 2 years ago, they skipped last year, they're probably due for it this year. So that's sort of in that range. Questions? I'm sure we have lots of questions.
What are the differences in the timelines for construction of the renovation versus new?
Yeah, so if you were to do new in
Please
one.
repeat the question.
Yes, so the question is the timeline about the different construction methodologies, whether it's renovation or new. So if we look at a single site and doing a unified school, that's the shortest period of time. There's no swing space. Yes, you have land acquisition, but there's nothing to knock down. You just get ready to go. So that's the easiest, I think, to make happen within that 5-year period. The most difficult and the longest would be demo everything and put 3 new schools. That's more complicated. That you can't do sequentially one school, then one school, then one school, because you'll be beyond 5 years. So you have to do 2 at a time. That's going to take all of that 5-year period. And to renovate to new, very similar. That's going to take all of that 5-year period as well. So the shortest construction cycle is a unified school. Sorry.
Hi, Mark.
Hello.
Thank you for your good work on this. So I've had a lot of outreach from members of the community about sort of this whole process.
Yep.
So to just educate myself further, there is a document on the Rhode Island Department of Education's website about the necessity for school construction.
Yep.
Sort of a guideline for this whole process. So it's a 42-page document that I read through a couple of times now, and I just have a couple
We've had to update it now 6 times, which is a cost. And it's part of the review, so like I said, basically an overview. It's not something that you just like send via email because it's gigantic, but every time we send it to Mike, we have to update that, because obviously we may fix something, because in our capital plan, so just to be clear, for elementary, you're only allowed $500,000 because you need an approved 5-year capital plan to be able to invest further beyond emergencies. So we've been in this cycle for 6 years, because I do believe that there's a lot of understanding, because they're going back to old rules that no longer apply, and was changed back in the 2017. So the Jacobs report is just infrastructure, what you have to fix over 5 years, not everything that has to be fixed. And that was a lot of confusion last time. The Bureau Veritas report is a report created for the General Assembly to have an overview of their school facilities for the state. It does not go in depth like they're doing right now for stage 2. What SLAM is doing for us now, and has done now, I think for the second time, is put together a stage 2 to be able to share with RIDE a proposed solution to basically prove out that we can fix the things that need to be fixed. But again, elementary schools are only allowed $500,000 for emergencies, and I'll let Mark take the rest for stage 1 or Holly.
Yeah, I can jump into stage 1. Typically at stage 1, you're going back to the Jacobs report, which was 2016, and then the district has everything that they've been working on, so it's updated. So you assume that Jacobs report is somewhat accurate, recognizing that they went into all these schools and weren't in there long enough typically. But they have a sense of the age of the school, and the mechanical, electrical, plumbing, they recognize the age of them. As the district does projects going on, when you do a stage 1, you then update that list with what's happened since the last time. What that says as far as stage 1, doing a deep dive for a stage 1, I've never seen that really done, because that's why the state does these Jacobs reports. That's why the district is taking care of their buildings in the meantime. And then now they have this, the Veritas report, right? So,
Not yet.
well, eventually. They were supposed to be released quite some time ago. And you use those reports, and you use those in the stage 1, right? So it's a state review, plus what the district's done, and now a second state review. And that's what you submit with the rest of the documents in stage 1.
Okay. Director Jason Sullivan is the person that is going to be responsible to make sure that we update and in our budgets packets, at the end of it, every year there's a capital plan, and as you all know, things get pushed aside because we're unable to get to stage 3. Right.
Okay, and I just have 2 more quick questions. So as part of this 42-page document, it then gives you guidelines for stage 2. And under the guidelines for stage 2, there's a section 4, that says design and construction cost projection. And then it says the projection shall include a detailed breakdown of the costs associated with the project, should include not only the estimated cost of construction, escalated for inflation at the anticipated bid date, but also the project management and design fees. So I wanted to make that sort of caveat, with this, because I think that that's an important point to make. And, it also talks about, submitting information about how you can streamline your operational costs. And I think that that's gonna be important for the school committee to see, how operational costs could be streamlined as a result of either option 1, option 2, or option 3. So that was just a point that I wanted to make for people here, because, I mean, obviously, we are here to talk about what is in the best interest of the students, the faculty, and the community, but also with the goal of potentially reducing operational costs, because we have buildings that are really old, really inefficient, so I don't want that to get lost in translation. So those are my 2 points.
So I reviewed the special school committee meeting that was done in August, and I watched as the school committee representative asked you, Holly, how you felt about the Bureau Veritas report not being ready, and the Jacobs report being from 2017, and you said that you would have to do a deep dive anyways. you said that the Veritas report should have been out 8 months ago. And you have heard that it's not gonna give you much. That's what you said at that meeting. You said the group was hired to go in every school in the state. And the depth of that, you said, we'll see.
Yeah.
You said what you're trying to do in stage 2, as far as establishing cost, whatever the path is for your capital plan, you really need someone to really look at the schools, I'm quoting you verbatim,
Yes.
and not assume what is in that report is accurate. Holly, you said you've done 12 stage 2s over the last 10 years.
Yeah.
You can't count on the Jacobs report, from 2017 and feel like if it's the Bible, it's the way to go. You need to do your due diligence. I think that basically what you're telling us is that, what you said, that you need to still do a deep dive into the schools. And that's gonna be done in stage 2. To me, it's very obvious, we're putting the cart before the horse. You're asking the school committee to handle millions and millions of taxpayers' dollars to make a decision on what path they wanna go forward with before they even have any report in any deep dive investigation. You would only do this with public money. No one would do this in the private sector. Nobody's gonna build a building and do it in this fashion. And I just find the whole thing reprehensible. And to tell you the truth, I reached out to school committee members and I asked them if they were aware that the renovation was, as I found out at the tail end, I wasn't able to come to that meeting until the very end. To the tail end of that meeting, I was able to have a discussion with you and a little bit with you, and I was told that the directive that was given to you was to do renovations as like they were new. And I reached out to many of my school committee members. Not one of them that I spoke to had the understanding that the renovations were going to be like new. The school committee is the legal body, according to Rhode Island general law, that's responsible for the care of these buildings.
It's in
They're
that letter, Catherine. That's
Excuse
not
me,
true.
please let me finish. The Rhode Island general was up.
Just you're stating
I will,
things that's inaccurate.
you know what, that's not true. I will
You
bring,
are.
you can say whatever you want, Gina, you have been inaccurate is a kind way to put it.
That's not true,
Excuse me,
Catherine.
multiple times, I've put it in letters to the editor, I'll put it out
That's
plenty.
fine,
I
you're
have
being
plenty,
inaccurate
please
again.
don't interrupt me, I
This is
don't.
not a public meeting, Catherine, this is about.
You know what, it
making sure
is,
that
it is.
accurate
This
information.
meeting was advertised for public input, so
You're
don't,
giving inaccurate
stop being a
information.
bully, Gina, you are a bully. You are interrupting me, and
I
I'm
think
gonna
you're
speak,
giving
you are
inaccurate
interrupting me, I am going to speak. Rhode
It's an
Island
accurate
General
question.
laws does put the school committee in charge. I spoke to multiple school committee members that were not under the impression that this renovation was gonna be renovation and build. They are the ones that have to vote on this. And again, you're putting the cart before the horse. You're saying the deep dive would be in the stage 2, but they are being directed, again, to allocate millions and millions of taxpayers' dollars without that deep dive. That is so irresponsible.
Can I ask a quick
And that's
question?
just one point. Yes.
Are
She doesn't
there state standards as to how renovations are to be done?
If-
Because it may
so
be
it-
that renovations have to be done with a certain standard
It
in order
is.
to meet state
It's clear, right, it's clear.
licensing and.
Well, it
There are-
has nothing to even do with that, right? If you want to maximize your 65% reimbursement rate, RIDE says renovate to new, period. If you just want to replace a roof, maybe you'll get some of that renovation
Maybe.
dollars. But if you're not addressing the ed spec in a holistic approach, they're not interested.
I have talked to someone on the Charter Finance Committee who's on the Hopkinton Town Council for years. She looked at the audits, all right, over the last years since 2017. She gave me the amount of money that RIDE has received, all right, for housing aid. And it was a large sum of money. And she told me she has never seen housing aid not be refunded. And that's only one point. I have many points. What
Excuse me,
are
Heather,
the,
this is
but,
not, this is not the place.
Okay,
This is,
so
if
if this
come
is
to
not-
ask questions, please let
I
somebody
am
else
here
ask the
for
question.
public input. It was
Yes, and you can give
advertised.
it, but you're not the
I
only
am a-
person here.
That's right, and so you know what, everybody can say what they want.
Look, can you
And
please let
if-
somebody else ask a question?
Absolutely, but there's many things, and if I can't say it here, then I will get it out in the paper.
That's, Nothing you can't say, Catherine, but a lot of your information is inaccurate.
Wrong. You have given false
Ma'am, go ahead.
information multiple times, and I can
That's
name.
not true.
I can name 5 right now. You
Catherine.
no, you don't want to hear it. Do you?
No, I want to be able to have this
Well,
public.
well, don't
this
tell me you
presentation.
haven't given false information. I'm ready to say it right
That's
now.
fine.
I am ready
I'm
to
not
say it
gonna,
now.
but you can give it in the paper,
Yes,
Sure.
I will.
ma'am.
I have a question regarding the option 1. Do any of the costs include what happens to the existing schools? So each community is left with a big empty building that if they choose to demolish, they'll be responsible for the costs, removing the material and renovating the property?
Yeah,
And where
the
is-
community owns the schools, right? So if they're not being used for a school function, they revert to the community for use as they see fit.
Oh my goodness. And also in option 1, I noticed there was a note that cost didn't include the price of the land, and you're talking about a sizable piece of land. So when you add that to the cost of construction, we're not comparing apples for apples.
Well, swing space on the others is equally as robust when you think about it. So the land acquisition cost has to be at fair assessed value, right? So it can't be like somebody comes in and says, hey, $10 million, here you go. You can't do that. It has to be assessed, and you can't pay more than that.
This is very complicated.
Of course.
I would like to just comment that I am so happy to see in the plans that option 1 and option 2, more traditional buildings and windows, because I've seen some school proposed designs that looked more like a warehouse or a prison. And I was pleased to see schools that let the light in.
Remember, these are renderings, so this is not what the schools will look like. This is a concept to share with RIDE, and stage 3 is when that happens, but depending on the option.
At least.
Yeah.
So even at the conceptual stage, we have to respect what's called New England chips, right, which has daylight and view. We have to calculate that. So the windows you see are purposeful because they meet the minimum requirements for daylight and view in and out of the classroom.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
I'm curious about 5 years necessary to complete the project, and whether or not you had any experience with variation within those 5 years, if the site chosen has public sewer and water versus what we have, which is septic and well, in terms of construction timelines.
It doesn't matter.
One is not.
One is not. We'll say dealing with Rhode Island Energy and some of the public utilities is not very easy. It takes forever to get the hookups. So I think there's time associated with one versus the other, and they're about the same.
Can I just follow up? Is RIDE forgiving of those fairly normal, if you will, procrastinations by National Grid or Rhode Island Energy?
So the stage 2 we produce, whichever option it is, has to be done within a 5-year period. We have to show a timeline, a schedule. There are communities that have gotten some, especially during COVID and during the escalation, post-COVID, have gotten a little bit of an extension, but it's a year at best.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, she was first.
I would just like to say that this is the 4th time I've heard your presentation,
I'm
Mark.
sorry.
No, because I want to be here and I want to know and understand what it is that's going on in this district. I am a taxpayer, don't have kids in the school, so I don't have that kind of a vested interest except that my tax dollars are at work here. And I think it's high time that we do something about our elementary schools. But back to my original comment, this being the 4th time, the first time I heard you, and I take really extensive notes of meetings, you did say at last month's school committee meeting that it was renovate to new. So I wanted to make sure that that was known because I just looked it up in my notes. You said it at the other two meetings also. And I will say, and I think I said it at Charlestown too, that renovating to new is the worst option in my opinion, because once you start tearing things down, you don't know what's there. Anything, especially Richmond, I'm a Richmond resident, I don't like the idea at all of having that basement still in use after we put out a lot of money to take care of renovating and giving our kids a better space. I don't think leaving the basement gives us a better space at all. So, you know, the idea of renovating to new, that's what RIDE says. You had to design this according to what RIDE says you need to do and what we need to follow. And I respect that you are trying your best with that plan, but it's not my favorite.
There and then, yes. Yes.
Yes, people can hear, because I don't think it was very professionally done this meeting.
Thank you.
The screen is so small, I didn't see any of the numbers, and wondering if this slideshow available online for the public to see, and where it would be located.
So, I believe, you said it was on the necessity for school construction tab of the website, but, I know they updated a few slides in the last time based on feedback, so we will update the slides tomorrow. I just got the, PDF from Catherine, but on the website where it says district, you go to necessity for school construction and all the documents pertaining to these projects are there. If you can't find it, call me up.
And I didn't get your name, I don't know, are you with Ride On?
Mark Rhodes with Slam.
Not
Mark Rhodes with Slam.
Slam?
Yeah, the architects.
Oh,
And actually joining us this evening, we have some school committee members, Jessica Purcell is here, Jill Dinsmore, Holly Hopkins, and Larry Phelps, and Diane Tech, for those. that may
Yeah,
know.
it seems to me there's more school committee, charitable school committee members here than there are residents. And could I just get a show of hands of how many people are residents of Rockington Town and pay taxes here?
I'm from Richmond.
I just wish there was more people that go here. I don't have kids in school either. I'm like this lady, I live in Ashaway, but I don't have children in the school system, but most of our taxes, I think it's 78% of them, go towards the school budget.
We did have Hopkins residents at the other two meetings as well.
Well, that's good, I'm glad, and that's why I came here rather than, because I know if I went to the charitable school meeting, and they run sometimes 3 hours long. I try to watch what I can online and do the after the fact, but, it's not always easy. So, I mean, if I would make a suggestion, a bigger screen, I'm older and I'm wearing glasses, I still couldn't see the numbers, and maybe, people would be able to have a microphone so that we can all hear what everybody's saying. We need. And I have.
On October 15th, there'll be a virtual presentation.
Yeah, I heard you say, I wrote that down, thank you.
Yes.
And then you mentioned, the Jacobs report, and there was one other report, I couldn't hear the name of it.
Bureau Veritas, but it's not our, that's from the General Assembly. In the law, it says that they also have to do a 5-year review of facilities, so that would be their 5-year review, but it's definitely behind the schedule.
Okay, and the Jacobs report, can that be found?
Yep, it's online under the RIDE website. You just have your Jacobs assessment.
Right.
Yep.
And I have a copy of it if you'd like to see it. If you don't remember, I'll let you see it. I have the whole thing printed out.
Yes. You all set?
Is there an opportunity for an individual such as myself, who's probably the least informed person, and the rest of my speech will probably reveal that, to ask directly to someone who is in the know if that person feels the question is too obtuse to ask in public? Meaning, I have some questions that others may deem stupid. I know I tried under my wife, she said that's stupid, so. But I don't wanna tie everybody up, but I don't wanna take the time to ask my question in public, because it might be a very low-level question, people say, where is it coming from? So where can I direct my question after the meeting, other than waiting for the next November 15th meeting, I mean, I'm 80 years old, a lot can happen to me between now and November 15th. So I want to get my snacks in now. See? See? Already approved myself. So the question is, where do, as an individual, go next to say, I have these two questions that are burning inside of me, and they may, if a
Just
person
ask
asks it, they're worth asking for that person.
I would say, ask the question.
Ask it.
Yeah, ask the question.
No bad
Go for
question.
it.
All right,
This is a safe space.
you asked for it. This is a low-level question, but I've been around here since double session back in the 70s. I've heard everything and anything. I've heard people debating saying, why the hell don't we just build a big barn and put them all in? I've had the whole 9 yards. Nathan Kagan and everything, going way back now. The bottom line is, we say we want the best for the kids. That's bullshit. It comes down to if people think the money's going to be spent well. And that varies from person to person. I just put an addition on. I spent extra money for my windows because I saved heat. Other people say, that's crazy. I'm thinking long term. All right, so there's so much of that. I think everybody who wants to pull that lever or write that has a duty to understand what's going on. That's my thing. Now, here's my question. And if it doesn't make any sense, you turn it into a question that you want to answer. That's the way you do things. All right, we talk about real dollars. And we've all been on it. I grew up across the street. My father paid $7,000 for our house. It's the worst one. You get it.
Yeah.
We talk about escalating costs. I guess you had two questions.
Yeah.
You guys have been around for a while. We're talking about 5 years. The Russians had a 5-year plan. The trouble is they changed it every 2 years. They never got it. That's kind of what I'm talking about. First question. And take out your magic ball. First ball. In 5 years, what are the most explosive things, to the best of your experience, that could throw this into a cocked hat? That's first one.
Okay.
Second, and that's his right, I used to be pretty good master, but this makes no sense. If the state is giving us 65% on the dollar, have I got that right? It's almost 2/3. If our costs go over, let me give you an example. The toilets, you budgeted $1,000 for a bathroom. And because of not your fault, it turned out to be $1,500, it's $500. Does the state help us with that extra $500, or do we need it? Does that make any sense?
It does. So, once stage 2 is agreed upon, that's the bucket of money that you have to use, right?
Okay.
So say it's $1, the state gives you $1, and they're gonna give you 65 cents on that dollar back when you've completed your plan. It's executed. If there are cost overruns during that period of time, you have two choices as a community. What I've seen mostly done, we value manage and stay within those costs.
I would say,
Or other communities, like South Kingstown, chose to put more money in because they wanted, for them, the better window was the big performing arts center. They chose to put additional money above and beyond RIDE because the community wanted that as a resource. They made that choice. So there are two ways to do it. What we have seen most communities do is we owe you the design on that number.
yeah, okay.
So we have to work together to get to that number. So you may have to trade something.
I would think that what you just said, as tough as it is to stomach, makes sense. Because we can't predict in 3 years the money we're voting on. Now, people will stick to it. Well, guess what? Take off the back wheel, what are you gonna do when you buy a car? So my last question is, what are the things in your experience, let's say you went to the casino, boy, you had a bad day. What feasible, possible, maybe even probable, based upon your experience?
Well, it's an interesting question, and what I've seen in most of the districts, especially, we'll say Newport, South Kingstown, kind of getting this end of the state, utility infrastructure, not your utility, the state utility, the electrical grid. Can it support the kind of thing, even in a renovation to addition, renovate in additions to buildings, take more power than the building is using today? Is there enough capacity? That's something that we have been looking more closely at to make sure that, for instance, I think it was in Newport, we had 2 transformers. So we made sure that we costed that up front because we knew we had a distribution problem. We had to take something away, or take a finish away, or put one less door in, or something like that to pay for it. But that was a discussion with the community, the board, the school board.
I'll tell you my question. Right now, the biggest word on everybody's mind depends upon blue or red, whether it's right or wrong or up or down. It's inflation. We just came off a very bad period of inflation. Depending upon who you listen to, we're either not in inflation or we are in inflation. We leave that open to what you think. I'm scared. We got a lot of political mess we're facing. I'm very afraid of inflation coming back in 2 or 3 years. And I just finished building something. Hundreds of thousands of dollars of materials that should never have cost. Go out, go to the store. You won't believe building materials. It's unbelievable. Am I not right? It's absolutely nuts. I'm really worried that you price this, and in 3 years, things go south. What do we do? That's not an easy answer.
It's not.
Give me the best answer you can.
So when we put these prices together, and it's not what I believe, or what Sine believes, or what Colliers believes, it's working with the state, RIDE, and working with a third-party estimator, whether that's a construction group or an estimating group that looks holistically at the state. There's for sure going to be contingencies built into that, right? Because we're basically at a conceptual level. So there's design contingencies.
Well, give me an example of design contingency.
So within that, say it's within that $1 that RIDE's going to give you, we're going to have 15% of that unassigned, 10 to 15% of that unassigned at this stage.
Oh, good. Excellent.
Plus, based on the midpoint of construction, depending on the option you choose, midpoint it's either next year, 3 years, or 4 years. We have to escalate to that point. So we'll look at the numbers and we will work with the state and pull the numbers. It could be 2%, 3%, 4%. It was 6% at one time that we would add to that cost, right? So there are mechanisms built into the budgets we create for stage 2 that try to accommodate escalation and the unknowns that we might see. But
That's the answer even I understood. Thank you for that.
Can you talk a little bit more about the safety and security things that would be fixed, whether it's new, unified renovations compared to what we have now? Because I also don't have children in the school system, but I'm from Connecticut where we've built some pretty
horrific stuff,
that was my big fear.
yeah. So one of the things in existing schools tend to have lots of doors, right? So when you design, renovate to new, or design new, you limit the amount of doors. That's number one. Number two is the main entries, like where the office would be, where you check in. It's ballistics, blind, Kevlar drywall. It's ballistics glazing in the doors. It's ballistics glass to the person who has to take my license. Sometimes there's automated machines that will scan your license so you're not actually physically putting something under a window. You're buzzed into an anteroom, which is the main office lobby, and you either wait there, so you can't run free. You wait there until somebody escorts you to where you need to be, or if you're a contractor and you have the right appropriate badge or whatever, you're allowed to go do what you need to do. But that's what we find is limiting the amount of doors, understanding how to create visible, safe, secure entries, right? So transparency is good in a way that you can see threats, you can see things that are going on, but protecting that environment. And it's really about creating the ability for a first responder to get there as quickly as possible before something gets in.
A couple things that I want
could share the kitchen, you could still have two cafeterias if you wanted to keep the early childhood, like we do at middle school, we have two cafeterias. The other efficient, I mean, for example, instead of doing 3 groups that come up, you have 1 group. Instead of putting, for example, the traveling budget for our specialists that have to go back and forth across. We right now have student services that, so if you need a clinical day program and you're pre-K-4, you have to come to Ashaway, even if you live in Charlestown, right? So as a regional district, you may not be able to go to the school closest to your home because the service doesn't exist in the school that you're currently closest to. So that happens now already. It's been happening for, over almost 100 years now. So those are just a couple of examples, and obviously, there are a few more. The grade 5, 5 years ago, or 3 years ago, so we've done this now for 6 years, when we first went out to, after the unified school was my original, when I came in, RGB was the architect, and the chair was already down this path, talking through a 1 unified school. As an option, there was other options, but it never went to the finish line. When I came in, COVID, as you remember, 2020 happened, and there was a lot of confusion in the public, so the school committee pulled the project, and then we went back to the $500,000 for just up to reimbursement. Because if we go over $500,000, then we're not reimbursed, we pay dollar for dollar. And remember, to be able to get reimbursement, it has to be an approved project for RISE. So, for an owner's project manager is requiring anything like over $2.5 million, don't quote me the numbers, but I believe it's about $2.5 million. And with the architect, it's any project over $500,000 that is required. And that's the General Assembly. So that's really, if you don't love the process, you talk to your senators and representatives, because that's what they give the direction to RIDE, and RIDE gives us the direction. So I understand, I don't love paying for it. I would rather all the money, they're very nice people, all the money that you have put into this, I'd rather it be in the facilities. The grade 5 opportunity is, like I said, at first, RIDE said no, because back in 2023, their bonuses were you could not underutilize the building. So on grade 5, if you move to grade 5 back to elementary school, you'd be underutilizing the middle school. So RIDE said, nope, that wasn't in that plan. However, right now, the career and technical opportunities that do exist, and we're getting ready for our new strategic plan, RIDE is very much interested in an opportunity where we could look through a K-8 opportunity where we bring grade 5 back into a unified model, and we open up, and we're really starting with agriculture. We're already doing it now, by the way, but right now, what's happening is you can only do so much at every school because you're doing it triple times, so that the resources cost more because you're not getting an assembly to come in from 1 location, they have to travel to 3 locations. So we really make sure, so that's why they have themes. So if you go to Ashaway, it's a STEAM, and what we want to do is bring those opportunities to K-8. RIDE is very much interested in a strategic plan that looks at that career exploratory K-8, and that would allow us, regardless of the town that you live in, because we are a regional district. So while, everyone wants their town school, you're not a town-by-town district, you are regional. And your main campus operates that way, but it's been very difficult at the elementary level for that to sort of take hold. People had asked about buses, 45 minutes. Prior, even before the redistricting, when we had all elementary schools, you had kids from Charlestown, because of where they lived, or in Ashaway, that were traveling 30 to 45 minutes, just depending on where they lived already. That was happening prior to because you have 120 square miles. But those are policies that the school committee can do. But overall, with grade 5, obviously if we have the 3 schools, it's a harder sell to RIDE because you have to show parity. So how do you show that you can do everything for every child the same way, and that there's not one getting more than another? That is not acceptable in their terms. You have to the buildings have to be larger. So, when you look at the enrollment numbers, and part of the stage 1 is its enrollment study. Stage 2, with Mr. Zenian is getting the updated enrollment study. That looks at birth rates, death rates, permits that are pulled, houses that are being built. All of that comes into the enrollment. And what we've done is we've put them on our website under necessity for school. If you go to the e-update button on the main website, that also has sort of like, the next important meeting, where we are to date. Those are our district bulletins that happen We also have, every month, you know, we collect emails from those who want sort of our announcements of where we're gonna be, and you can get more information that way too, but, did I miss any of your questions?
Nope, thank you very much.
I asked related to this idea of this career tech weight. So are you talking use the space at the middle school that's vacated by fifth grade before that?
So for example, so we would open up the opportunities for our middle school students, and we would open up opportunities for our elementary schools. It wouldn't necessarily be like our high school students, but they could, you could cross over, because we have the campus.
Would you be using that as a win for that?
Yes, we would, now remember, because the building isn't empty, we're utilizing all the spaces.
Well, if you.
If grade five, grade
down
back.
to middle school, you're gonna have a whole wing of that school that's empty now. So in order to make it career tech exploratory, you have to invest in that too.
So right now, we're looking at career and tech opportunities that do not yield the highest level, like, for example, construction technology is a very high ticket, program to have. Welding is, you know, because it comes with equipment and things like that, which is why one of the things we're looking to, we started with was agriculture, around our farm to school initiatives, around our greenhouses, we have our nature and our pollinators, there's so many things that are going on with the agriculture world. We just got notified by the USDA, nationally recognized for the work, even without new schools. They gave us the US Green Ribbon Award a few years ago for our work on efficiencies, even without the new facilities. Pre-K is an area that we have to really, the Bright Stars rating, our facilities are very much a concern to be able to get to that rating. Now they don't have to have 5 stars, but obviously, don't know about you, but nobody wants to go to a restaurant that's 1 star. But it's minimum. We're actually gonna go, looking to go out again to get our Bright Star rating, because even if it comes back that it's a 1, due to the level of the facilities and different things, we have a baseline of how it's working. With the new strategic plan, the alternative learning work is definitely, and the career tech and exploratory options. If thinking of, for example, another one is visual arts and performing arts. So we have that at Hope Valley, and we go to Ashaway, STEM becomes STEAM, but we're looking to have those opportunities replicated, so it's in one place, so that, and the other nice thing about that is your resources are all in one place, rather than having, you know, multiple people travel around, your students, our students have what they need right in that, in the school, without having to wait for the school psychologist to come over and look at the building, although, thanks to the school committee, we finally have a school psychologist in every building.
Now, just still talking about the career, unfortunately, Ms. Dinsmore later, Mrs. Result just left, but she said it's a decided factor. Do we have to decide at the next meeting whether or not we want to do that?
No.
Because for me, it makes that school 1,500 kids.
No, that's a decision that,
Pre-K through 5 would be our biggest school before the Turnpike Slant. I know a lot of people are not comfortable with the size of the pre-K through 4 schools, so when you're adding another 200 kids, it definitely complicates things.
Yeah.
There are possibilities.
I understand.
know what it is.
So stage 2 is not the project, right? Stage 2 is that we are required as a district with the architect and our owner's project manager to show RIDE that we have a solution to the facilities that we've represented in stage 1. It's proof of concept that we can do it. Stage 3 is when you make a decision, and those decisions for the charter act get done by a building committee, which is what's happening right now for the main campus. So there's a lot of legs, but right now what this is can you show us that this can work? And then when we did this last time, when we had the preschool option, one of the biggest concerns was trying to get it done in 5 years, and then we had the school at South Kingstown that was willing to give us their, one that they emptied, to put both Richmond and Charlestown in as an example. So yes, those spaces no longer exist, so you have to be thinking about the swing space as an addition. But the unified school was back, I mean, that was one of the first concepts where I first came in as district superintendent, that the district was looking at.
So I just want to clarify, stage 2 sets the money in the master plan. It's based on the number of students. So once RIDE agrees to that money, they're not giving you more. You'd have to go back for another stage 1 to get that. We've seen districts do that. But stage 2 describes the plan, at least conceptually, the master plan for 5 years And the budget is based on the number of students, based on NASDAQ times the formula. There's that whole formula.
And basically, once the school committee decides on the plan, you start working on that stage two.
We complete stage 2 for February. Yeah.
Wanted to ask Tina a question before we get too far away from, you mentioned bringing the career tech possibly, because Rye's interested in bringing it down to a lower level of grades. Was there any discussion around, not career tech, but industrial arts, and reestablishing some of the industrial arts in younger grades, like home ec and woodshop drafting?
So, and the career and tech has standards, so the career and tech exploratory, industries, we have had industry art, you see that, well, for example, they do that in Lowell too. But, it's really, that's a budget conversation, less about the right, because that's gonna be up to us, right? That's our programmatic, typically what we do, like even at the high school, middle school, we start courses that they're interested in, what do they want to be coming, we talk to the families, the school improvement teams really talk about those issues. Okay?
Great, thanks.
Sorry, she has been waiting for quite a while.
Thank you, Mark. Gina, I don't know who you are, I'm sorry. Are you the superintendent?
Yes, I'm the superintendent, Gina Picard.
Right, of the Charahoe
Charahoe
District.
Schools.
Okay, very good, thank you. Hi, my name is Jean Barry. I live in Richmond. And as you can tell by the color of my hair, I do not have any children in the district. But my kids did go through the district. And one is an elementary school teacher. Actually, she's a reading expert who teaches other students to read. And very, very proud of her. She just took a picture of 3 former students who were her students and now they are teachers. And I just thought that was really awesome. I'm a little behind the times, Gina and Mark, about this. I had a neighbor, a dear neighbor, just let me know about this meeting tonight. And what I'm a little confused about is this issue was voted down on, I think it, I'm a little old lady, so my memory is bad, but it was last year. So I'm confused as to why there is a move to resuscitate this when I think two towns, Richmond and Hopkinton, disagreed that it would be a good idea to knock down 3 schools and rebuild 3 schools. Can you guys help me out here to, why is this being resuscitated? And now, the town people do not have a yay or nay choice. We have a choice between 3 choices that, obviously are gonna raise our taxes, and I do have questions about that too. But can you help me out what the history is
Yes,
of
so,
this
and I know it's, especially when you don't do it every day, it can seem confusing. And I think when the law changed in that 2018 period, there definitely was confusion about how projects were done. So the state had, and actually, going back to 2018, that presentation I think is still online. The whole state voted for what they call bond dollars for school facilities. And then, actually, it was overwhelmingly passed by all the towns, and we had the votes listed on one of our presentations. And that meant everybody in the state could get reimbursed with significant different bonuses to be able to upgrade the facilities to the standards set forth in the school, what they call school building regulations. So what happened then was your district, with Barry Ritchie, began talking through what they call the necessity. Newer and fewer was the term they used, newer and fewer. The idea was that to reduce when you could based on enrollment declines and things like that. So the newer and fewer started, and then many districts were applying for the stage 1 application, which is what it's called now, to be able to get these projects. So stage 1, every 5 years, stage 1 has to happen. We have been doing it every year because we have yet to have a plan that is finalized. So because Richmond is 90 years old and Charlestown is reaching, and what RIDE says in its standards in the General Assembly is that a school is at life at 50 years. So Richmond is getting its second life just about, and as they get older, they age. So what happened then was, and that vote never happened because it was withdrawn because the school committee decided to reset. They were listening to families, and at that time, the families wanted more, they wanted smaller schools. They wanted to keep their schools in the community. So then 2021, 2022, we had to redo the stage 1. We did the stage 2. That's when RIDE came in. We talked with RIDE. The bonuses were still available. So the vote had to happen that time because those bonuses those only existed. So we were eligible for 81% reimbursement. If we qualified for all the bonuses, which we had a review, I can't remember them off the top of my head, but they were in our presentation. So those bonuses would get us up to 81% reimbursement. So we put forward the bond referendum for the General Assembly, which was not, we said 3 schools specifically because people were worried that that we were going to change course, because you can. Stage 3 is actual, what are you going to do? So stage 2 is just that you have proof of concept.
Yeah, so you could have at that point said 1 school at stage 3.
Not the way we wrote the bond legislation,
Yeah,
no.
okay.
But the bond legislation is dependent on the school committee. The bond attorney comes in, they provide what they want, and that's when they also changed, because it's state legislation, they changed their idea of, instead of doing aggregate, like the Charahoe Act says, they put in the bond legislation that they wanted it to pass in every town. So that's not required by the Charahoe Act, that was placed in the new bond legislation. So the school committee has purview over that. So they can put in, like for example, when we did when CALA was done, the Charahoe Alternative Learning Academy, they put in the bond legislation that was going to be a third across all 3 towns. So that legislation happened. So when the bond failed in May, we got a lot of feedback about the elementary schools, people not wanting the 3 elementary schools, but we didn't get a lot of feedback on the main campus, so we took the main campus projects, not all of them, but the big ones that we needed to get done in the next 5 years, and we made that capital plan, and then that was voted on in the previous November for the main campus. And it passed with flying colors, there was no concern there. But we still had to, in that same time, reapply for stage 1 per the state's process, because we need a capital plan for elementary school. So because our buildings are very old, you have to either renovate to new, is what Ryan will call it, but in the letter on the website, in the public packet, there is a letter, actually it's addressed to Mr. Zenian, that gives the 3 options the school committee was selecting, and one is renovation/addition. That is in the letter on page 3. On the website, under the August 5th meeting of school committee, go to the school committee tab, go to the August 5th meeting, and that is one of the items for the, that the school committee received and then voted on August 5th, and that's how we ended up here. So this time, the school committee wasn't waiting until February, because that has proven not to work, because then people felt like it was rushed, they didn't have a lot of time. So what happens now is the school committee will decide the option they want to put through stage 2. Then they will submit to in February their application, and then they'll have until November to work with the community, on, well, even now, stage 2, community forums have to happen, where do you want the pre-K, where do you want this, but even still, it's still a rendering of what people want in the community. But stage 3, per the Charahoe Act, the school committee has no purview once it's passed by the voters. That's when the building committee steps in, and the town councils appoint 3 members for each town, and then the school committee has 1 member per town, and they will then determine the bond dollars, and they pick the architect. So they may say, well, we don't want SLAM, which means we can't use any of SLAM's per the law, because it's their intellectual property. And we would have to, the building committee would select the OPM, they would select the architect. Please, I know this is not the easiest thing to
That wasn't your
understand.
question. The question was, why did they bring back the $150
Yes.
million bond when it was defeated 2 out of 3 towns? And I know members of the school committee that are asking the same question.
I'm sorry, can you just,
So-
I'm just asking, can you just
so-
finish? So
Yeah.
That was the
SLAM gave
question.
us two options. The third option was the three schools, because they've already done it for us.
Wasn't the school
So
committee.
it was,
Wasn't the
one,
wasn't
it was one of the options that they brought back, just in case, because some people said they still were interested in the three schools. And again, the three schools, because they had already done it for us, they gave the option, basically, it was like buy two, get one free, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
Also, all through the launch process, you told the public time and time again that renovate two would cost about the same as building new schools. You never had the time to give those numbers. So to me, in my mind, this was a comparison to show that this is what it would cost to build the new schools that we talked about last time, that yes, was voted down by 75 votes district-wide in a special election in May, versus what it would cost to bring a renovation to rise standards. If you want the reimbursement, you have to do it their way. Unfortunately, that's all it is. They've expressed that to us time and again, whether it's in the necessity for school construction meeting, when they come and they present to us that members of the school committee are on, there's 5 of us on it, and then in public meetings. And now here are the numbers that show what you guys said last time.
Yeah, we actually had members of the school committee say they wouldn't vote for any project unless we could show the renovations additions number, which is why we made sure it was one of the options.
So are there capital improvement dollars included in each school budget each year for each school?
Yes, every year, but you have to do this process.
You have to do the.
Stage one.
Stage one.
And then you have, so because we don't have a 5-year capital improvement plan for elementary schools, they will only allow the district to spend up to $500,000 in elementary for safety and security, or like for if there's a damage from a leak or something like that.
Yeah, and that's it.
That's it. And then we pay, then if we have to do it, we pay dollar for dollar.
Do they get does the district get reimbursed?
Upon project completion.
So if you spend 500,000, you get 500,000.
We get 65%. 65%.
64.
Or back.
Now,
Right, we have over $300,000.
say this is gonna cost us 104 million. How are the costs going to be divided, between each town?
That would be the school committee decision. They'll decide that with bond legislation. So what happens is, the bond legislation has to sort of be written in parallel. So once the school committee makes a decision in October, they'll hire bond counsel, and then they'll November, they'll make a decision on what they want the bond and all of those logistics will be decided by the school.
Is there
committee.
like a formula?
No, it's up, well, the Charahoe Act says it's aggregate, but because it's state legislation, the bond, they can make some changes like they did with the Cala building as an
Because
example.
Charlestown, I don't know, in my recollection, Charlestown, usually pays less.
Right, according to the Charahoe Act, that's correct. Unless, like she said, we made.
So right now, the
school committee
Charahoe
needs
Act
to
is for
change.
enrollment numbers. So the way it's based is you pay for
okay.
you
Yeah,
pay
yeah.
for the students that come from the resident town per the Charahoe Act. So like we just did the tri-town count, which is being updated now. As of October 1, the enrollment comes by each town, and then each town pays based on their enrollment of their students that live in their town.
Okay, so we're not even at the point then of knowing what the impact of the tax increase would be for each town.
Well, no, because like your taxes have fire in them, police, senior centers. So it's the side that we handle would be, what would it be for how we would allocate the term in the bond? That would be the school committee's decision.
Right, but wouldn't the school committee be able to tell us, I don't know, each town what they're going to be looking at for increase?
The fiscal impact, but how it's divvied up would be determined based on the way the bond is written.
Right.
And we
So
don't
right
even-
now, it's based on enrollment numbers.
We don't even know
There
land
have been
costs.
capital improvement projects that were split evenly between the 3 towns.
Right, the Cal is.
It hasn't happened all the time, but that's a possibility. That's up to the school committee and the individual town councils.
And are student populations decreasing?
So we are seeing decreases, like for example, right now, our freshman class is higher in our high school, but let's say we've lost about, and I haven't looked at the tri-town count, but let's say I think last year was around 80, but they're not in the same grade, so that's why you don't see necessarily.
Okay. Is there a way to find that out, for someone like me who?
Oh, yeah. So actually, the tri-town count will be in the school committee's agenda under FYI.
All right. Right,
And then I post it under the necessity for school
and
construction
then
tag.
any town, any, resident of each of the towns can go onto the website.
Yeah, or they can call and request the document.
Right, very good, thank you.
Right now, Hopkinton has the most students. Prior to this, I haven't looked at the new tri-town, but as of last year, Hopkinton had the most, then Richmond, and then Charleston.
I think it's important for you to know that at the other two meetings, the parents who were present, many of them are in favor of 3 separate schools because they want that town school feeling.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of people out there who want those 3 schools, even though it was voted down in the budget last year.
87,104,000 It's.
I think the thing that maybe people are missing out on is that due to the age of the buildings and, state education requirements,
Yeah.
we have to do something.
Yeah.
It's just, these are the choices. We can't just say, we're not gonna do anything, we're just gonna do the minimal maintenance and hope that we'll get through another couple of years. Eventually, we have to do something.
Sorry, we had a question over here that I want to make sure we get.
wanted to see if I heard right. Did you say the 3 existing buildings have the 20 to 30 acres needed to build a new school?
No. If you were to do a unified school, the approximate by regulation amount of area land you would need is about 23 to 30 acres.
Okay, so that's just for the one.
The unified,
School.
yeah,
So you said you were tracing through the woods and everything?
yeah.
So are
I got
you-
lost.
Are you looking at,
We've been
for
tracing.
a one unified school?
We're doing our due diligence, we're looking to see if there's available land, and what it would be like.
Yeah, and have, because there's a lot of wetlands around here, so.
I found a lot of things.
Or rock.
Hopefully no
So
tips.
how long will that,
Not yet, I'm itchy though. Yeah.
how long process is that?
That process has to happen to a certain extent during stage 2. But in conversations that Holly has had with RIDE, the RIDE doesn't want you to acquire land until you've proved something via a referendum, right? You don't want to agree to a purchase and sale and then be held to it. So everything would be contingent upon whatever you vote on. So it's a process.
Try and look for centralized areas for all the towns, then, because we have to split out. And that would be, probably all the schools would have to be bused to a one unified school?
That's basically a unified school, yeah.
Yes, yes.
I wondered, since there are a number of school committee people here, if they have any concerns about the size of the unified school and having these very young children in such a busy environment. I don't think I expressed that as well as I meant to, but this school, my son attended 40 years ago, and it was very important to us that he be in the community where he lived. That was a top priority. I just wonder, I have no children in the school system. I wonder how parents feel about sending their 5 or 6 year old to this big conglomerate. I do appreciate the separate pods, if you will, but still, I wonder if that won't be kind of emotionally overwhelming and bewildering.
I think, I'd love to hear from the parents, but that question did come up on last Wednesday, and one of the parents, I'm gonna forget their name, and I think they came from Mississippi, Kathy, or someplace like that, where there was a unified school kind of like this, right, and even bigger. And one of the things they talked about was very interesting, it was a counterpoint to that a lot of we'll say a 2-track school or a smaller school, if her child was getting bullied, there was no place for them to go within that 2-track school. They couldn't find an appropriate accommodation away from the situation, right? So that was just her point, right? The way she looked at it. The other thing is I know Gina has talked a lot about this, the access to the affinity programs, whether it's the STEAM program, the health and wellness, or the outdoor program. if it's here, it's hard for the child over there to get to that, right? And be exposed to it. So part of the opportunity is exposing children to the most you can to figure out what they're into, what makes them tick, and find affinity groups within the school. And we are, I think, going to tour some of the board through Johnston, where we did this very thing. It's grades 1 through 4, and 1,100 students, so it just doesn't have pre-K, but it's 1 through 4. And see how they've done it. And they're excited about the opportunity. Parents are excited. They went from 4 schools that have some issues, right? Some old issues, some other things, to 1 school centrally located, where the high school and middle school are. So they saved a bunch of money on busing. They found some efficiencies in the cafeteria, the food service, the vendors, stuff like that. But for them, it was really about opportunity to expose their children to more things. And the bullying thing was very real, right? If you're in a small 2-track school and you have 2 second grade classrooms, where do you go?
That's a great point.
Yeah, so the other thing is that, we don't see big, right? We're trained to sort of break these scales down. And you effectively would have neighborhood schools within a single site, right? Even multiple entrances where kids are coming in the morning. You think about 1,200 little legs running into a building. It's kind of fun to watch, but it's the way we design the school, you break it down to their community. So they're never around, say, more than a 4-track school, right? So you break them up. So it's not like it's 18 first grade classrooms and they're all finding their way down the hall. Yeah. It's around a community center. And in Johnston, we took the mascots of all the 4 schools and we hid them throughout the building. So it's a discovery, and it's about bringing kids together instead of sort of separating them to each of these separate identities. That's what worked for them, right? We have to figure out what's going to work for you.
But that's a great answer, thank you.
So I would like to share a little bit as a parent perspective, and that was a comment I wanted to make as well, which is that as we've been going through this process, and last year when the bond failed, in large part, I believe, because parents in Hopkinton were told that if they voted it down, Hope Valley School would be open, it would stay open. That was a big thing that parents were told. This winter, the school committee voted to close Hope Valley, and 100 of those kids now go to Richmond, which is where my kids have gone to school. It's always been the biggest school. It's always had at least 400 kids. Now it has 500 kids. Personally, my children never had an issue with the size of the school, especially because I think that school does have the best parking infrastructure, the buses. They really developed their smaller communities of the bus. The small kids sit in the front of the bus. They're not roaming around. Everyone has an assigned seat. But I think it is a matter of perspective, right? For me as a parent that has had children in the biggest elementary school, it still is bigger than that. But I've had multiple people, including the parent at the last meeting, who said, this is what the size of the schools are in California, in Georgia, wherever I'm from, New Jersey. This is the size of the schools. But it's out of most people's comfort zones. But we've also heard time and again that paying for 4 elementary schools across the towns is out of taxpayers' comfort zones. So nothing is going to be perfect. It's not. And I think that these conversations do push people to think a little differently than you may have grown up with or you may have expected. But right now, again, with 100 kids, my kid's in the basement this year. The part of Richmond that is the least ideal for a classroom. He's in 3rd grade, and because he has a new teacher, she didn't get to pick her classroom, so he's in the bottom floor, where the previous year, Richmond had worked really hard to get kids out of the basement. So instead of having only some classrooms down there, they had moved it down, and now it's different, but he doesn't care. He doesn't care at all. It's not even an issue, so it's one of those things that I do want to share as a parent who's gone through these changes in a different way than thinks about kids
And kids are adaptable and resilient.
And they're different from when my son was growing up. It's a whole different culture.
So I am gonna have to wrap this up, but I'll
Yeah, he had a question and he
Sure.
just got here and I have one more. I have
Sure.
many, but I'll settle for one.
What kind of concerns me a little bit is when the superintendent says that the Jacobs report is outdated and we don't go by that. But on the website, it says 2017 Jacobs assessment. So it's like it's one or the other. Either we're not, abiding by and taking the Jacobs report, like she said, because it's out of date, but then the school through SLAM uses the Jacobs report. And then not only that, but there's the 70 million, anybody could look at this on the website, $70 million. Now that $70 million is all schools. That Jacobs report included the high school, middle school, tech center, and the 4 elementary schools. That's 70. Now, we already went out to bond for the high school and middle school. So that $70 million, all right, shouldn't even be 70 million because we've already gone out to bond for that. And now we have one less elementary school. So now you have to change that number. That's very deceiving because when the common person looks at that and sees $70 million, they're thinking, all right, that to renovate, it's gonna cost $70 million.
it's gonna cost more than that.
But then when you look at the Jacobs report, it says the Richmond, Charlestown, and Ashaway to renovate, it comes to 18. What's that?
But this is public input, this is, you know what, when I asked him, this is public input, this
I'm
is what
giving
it was
public input
advertised.
because-
And he's going by the information that was, okay, then anybody can you answer this one more
Right,
question,
let me.
please? Because anybody can leave, nobody's held, nobody's changed here,
But we
you
have to
can leave,
close the
nobody's
school, though.
changed here.
All right, but anyway, the point I'm getting to, thank you, by the way. The point I'm getting to is when the Jacobs report looked at renovations, the total renovations now, the 3 schools, Richmond, Charlestown, Ashaway, come out to 18.5 million. Now, somebody said, add 30% to that, and that'll give you the accurate figure today, what it would cost.
That was
It said
right.
right, that was right that said that, right there, it's right in the public meeting, the school committee. So that's 24 million. Take off the 65% reimbursement, you're looking at about $12 million for renovation. Now, I went through every single school committee meeting, watched every single meeting. There are multiple school committee members that never heard the phrase renovate like new, build like new. They just heard renovations. Now, all of a sudden, the term renovations like new come out that mean more than just renovating the school. It means tear down, rebuild, huge additions onto the school. Tell me what meeting that was discussed, all right, where renovations like new was discussed.
It was last month's school committee meeting. We already went over this before
No,
you
I-
came in because I said I take very meticulous notes. And I looked up my notes from last month's school committee meeting where Mr. Rhodes made his first presentation to the school committee. And I have in my notes that he said renovate to new because that's what RIDE requests.
Where was the school committee discussion on that, because it went by, listen, this is.
No, don't tell me to listen. You've been rude tonight, so why don't you just step back a little bit? I'm gonna tell you this, it's the school committee's responsibility to ask those questions.
Give you that answer.
But
The
it's
school-
her
the
responsibility to
school committee
ask.
chair could not
I
give you that
sat,
answer.
I heard, I understood. They must have sat, heard, and understood, and that's why they didn't ask.
You know what?
Who's it?
Off the top of my head, it was
Multiple-
September 23rd.
Multiple school committee members said they did not have that understanding.
that's on
That's-
them.
That's a
If they're
problem.
going to
You know
do
what?
it, let
The
them
school-
do it.
The school
Exactly.
committee chair could not even
Catherine,
tell you
shame
that.
on you. Why
I don't-
were
you know
you
what?
asking these questions when you were on the school?
You know what? I did. You know what? You're right. You know what? Guess what? There were plenty of times I asked questions, and you know something? I
Get
can
my
prove
face
it.
like that.
I can prove it. I can prove it.
Get in my face like that.